Compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice requirements have been satisfied. Meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting, are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center and published in the record for the first 10 days of the new year. Copies of all revised or additional meeting notices are sent via fax to the Record, Suburbanite, and Northern Valley Press, and are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center. For the record, we are awaiting Councilman Barzalato, who will be a little late, and Councilman Dan Park's location is unknown. So we have a work session today, and the work session starts with public comment. We set aside a few minutes for that. Citizens are welcome to address the mayor and council on any governmental item of concern to them, whether or not it's scheduled on the agenda. Citizens should give their names and their street when they're recognized to speak. Large groups are urged to select someone to represent them. The public is advised that these meetings are recorded and are subject to the Open Public Records Act. So I will go around the room, starting in this corner, and if anybody would like to speak, just raise your hand. I'm sorry, you want her to speak?
Well, why don't you start on that side for a change? I always speak.
Oh, so it's up, I'm going this way. You want to speak?
Yes, please. My name is Walter Cosman. I live at 31 Woodmere Lane here in Tenafly. And I would like to address the council on one subject. The subject is not personnel. The subject is liaison. And I respectfully ask, does the Tenafly Senior Center have a liaison with the Borough Council as it has had in the past?
So let me explain that to you, okay? For many, many years, the Senior Services Committee met in the Senior Center. And for whatever reason, their agenda was taken up primarily with what was going on in the Senior Center. At the same time, we have a board of directors, a board of trustees, I should say, of the Senior Center, which is not appointed by the mayor. And basically, they are independent. In fact, they're so independent, so I was saying to one of the ladies today, as long as I've been mayor, more often than not, I don't even know who's on the board of trustees. I never know who the chair or the president of that board was. Although I did attend a couple of meetings over the years I've been mayor, and reminded them that if there were any issues that they felt needed addressing, they could feel free to come to the mayor and council. They've been pretty independent up until this particular point, you know, when we have issues with our director's health. At the beginning of this year, or maybe a little before this year, actually it was Gloria that came to me and talked about expanding, well, I don't want to use the word expanding, so creating and expanding services to seniors in our community and targeting specifically residents that don't come to the senior center either because they don't want to or because they're unable to. In many cases, they're housebound. I think everybody at this table thought it was a good idea. The request was made to move that committee out of the senior center to basically kind of disconnect it to a certain degree with the senior center so that they could attack or, you know, address the issues that they felt were important for all seniors, not just the seniors that were attending the senior center. So that was done. So previously, the liaison to the Senior Services Committee basically was the liaison to the senior center because there was really no disconnect between that committee and the senior center. That has changed. And it's come to my attention that we would be well served to appoint a liaison from the mayor and council to the senior center. We already have Councilman Bosch is the liaison to the Senior Services Committee. And I think we're going to, if we don't talk about it tonight, we'll talk about it very shortly, to have somebody, and I believe we would be well served to have somebody other than Councilman Bosch, because there's two separate missions and I don't want to confuse them. However, the one thing that I stressed to Joyce Kalman, who is the chair or the president of the Senior Center Board of Trustees, was there should not be a total disconnect between the Board of Trustees and the Senior Services Committee. It would serve both groups well if they had a liaison between each other so that they both knew what both groups were doing and there was less duplication because there are so many things to do. So I would urge both the trustees and the Senior Services Committee to appoint a liaison from their group to attend the others' meetings.
I think, and I may be in error, okay?
No.
Not unusual.
No.
Not unusual. There's another lady who's the president of the Tenafly Senior Center, and in that capacity is in charge of the trustees and runs the monthly trustee meetings.
I would assume that's Joyce Kalman, is it not?
You're right.
She's the president.
Oh, but I thought you pointed to somebody.
No. Well, I'm just...
Why? Then I'm in
May I say something too?
Okay.
May I say something too? When we started this year, what happened, I started a liaison with the Senior Citizen Committee. And at the same time, Julie invited me to be also the liaison and attend the meetings at the Senior Center, part of the Board of Trustees she has. Unfortunately, she got sick, and that information was not passed anymore. Now, what happened a few, last month, the president, the chairman of the Board of Trustees came to one of the senior citizens, and she invited me, and I accepted to come also to the meeting, which is gonna be on Monday. So the two, and also what was also asked at the same meeting is that the Senior Citizen Committee have also a representative into the Senior Center Board of Trustees during the meetings, so there is a very strong connection and they work together in the same thing. So the Senior Center, the Senior Citizen Committee has agreed to send a representative from now on. There was, while when Julie was sick, that kind of a separation took place.
I'll go for broke. I've been wrong once tonight. I'll go for broke and see if I can be wrong a second time. I'm under the impression there's only one person who appoints liaison, and that's the mayor. So whoever else appointed a liaison in good spirit probably did it, but it's the mayor who has to appoint a liaison.
Well, you're absolutely correct, Walter, so you've only been wrong once tonight. But, you know, this really fell through the cracks, and Gloria and Max have picked up the ball and run with it, so we're going to straighten this out.
And I don't want to waste any time. So as long as you say you're aware of it, you know what should be done, you're working on it, and it's going to be done.
It's going to be resolved, absolutely.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you bring up the second
I
subject?
thought you said that was your second subject.
No.
You can't be wrong twice if you only have one subject.
The second subject is completely different.
Okay, go ahead.
The second subject is about an accident that I am hoping never happens in Tenafly, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. And I brought it up, and I told it to the former police commissioner, and I think that I brought it to the board. And I'm talking about crosswalk. Crosswalk painted into the street on River Edge Road, opposite the ambulance. I think it's the ambulance headquarters.
That's in the process of happening.
It's in the process.
Yep, we had to do get some approvals from the county because of the nature of the road, but that is definitely happening.
So be it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think Max is going to bring up mine.
Well, if you'd like to speak, otherwise,
I'm Gloria Lane from 64 North Lyle Avenue, and I'm here to support the people from the senior center in regards to the staffing, the lack of staffing at this point. I also, Max is going to talk more about it, but I'm also looking for your approval to go to Bergen County Workforce on behalf of Tenafly to find out if in fact we are eligible to get any kind of help from them with staffing for our van and whatever else we might need for the senior services.
Well, any help that you could get from the county would be welcome.
But the only thing is, and I think Max will reiterate this, is that I do not want to go unless I know that the council supports the effort and my going there on your behalf. I'm Tenafly's.
Well, if Max is going to talk about it, then you can hear what we're going to say
Okay,
later on.
so and Max,
Sure. No,
the
it's
other
okay.
issue too, okay?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Any other public comment?
Yeah. As president,
Just say your name for the tape.
Joyce Kalman,
Thank you, Joyce.
40 Mellon Lane. As president of the senior center, and I'm new at this, by the way, first of all, thank you, Mayor. I think that you straightened out a lot of our questions. But I just want to tell you about the tenor and the mood of the center. You know, we get over 100 people coming to that center every single day. And I'm not aware of the town knowing what goes on there or what kind of people come there. And that, I think we have a big gap in that area. I mean, this town is famous for its ball games and all of that, but the center seems to be the poor child. And I'd like to remedy that someday. You know, that's my background. But anyway, that's one thing I want to point out. But since Julie's illness, there's been panic at the center, and these people feel totally removed and scared about what's happening. There's been rumors all over the place. And it's my job to make them feel that, you know, the town is behind them. And that's not easy to do. And so I'm here to tell you that it's important, the seniors are important in this town, and I think we should show more about what's happening. Thank you.
Well, I need to mention to the council that Joyce and I did have a good conversation today. And, you know, I said a couple of things to her that I repeated just a few minutes ago, and that is that if the Board of Trustees is concerned with anything, well, you'll have a liaison, specific liaison soon, but you always have the opportunity to come in and speak to the borough administrator who runs the town, or come and speak to the mayor, or get the ear of any council person if you care to. For too long, there has been a bit of a disconnect, but, you know, basically, the Board of Trustees is an independent body. And if you need our assistance, we're here for you. Don't kid yourself. The Senior Center has an excellent reputation throughout the county as one of the premier senior centers in the county, and it's well deserved. I can't speak for the other members of the governing body. You know, I try to stop by there occasionally just to see what's going on. I have close friends who are there on a regular basis that keep me filled in on what's going on there, and I do read the newsletter that has the schedule, so I know what, and I communicated on a regular basis with Julie, and I come in to see Becky a lot. And by the way, our administrator and I met with Becky this afternoon to make sure that everybody is on the same wavelength. Okay, the rumors that you mentioned to me today, hopefully they've been dispelled. The senior center is not closing. The senior center is not going to be taken over by recreation. And Becky, although she's moving further away from Tenafly, has shown an indication to stay. So those are three of the rumors that I think we can put to bed.
Right.
You know, as far as the personnel is concerned, decisions will be made at this council table, but everybody needs to remember the following. At budget time, we budget for personnel. We budgeted for a full-time director and a full-time assistant. Unfortunately, out of our control, the director has been out on illness practically the whole year. We, as a body, need to take up what, if anything, we want to do in the meantime while her situation is in a state of flux. And that's the decision that this governing body can take up at any time. okay? But rest assured that the administrator and Becky talk on every day. That's one of the things that's on her calendar. So we are aware of Becky's mindset and how things are going. So don't feel that it's out of mind. It's not that. And maybe, maybe this is the first time in my experience that the senior center has had some issues due to the fact that it's so darn independent. If this was the DPW or the finance office, we would be all over it because it's a much closer connect. So in the meantime, there's no reason. The lines of communication are there. If you or anybody on the trustees or the assistant director or the acting director want to talk to us, you have that ability. So we're gonna take care of things. It's a gem. You don't have to tell us that. It's a gem. We know we're serving 100 people a day, and we know that those people couldn't be served elsewhere. And to show the interest, with a lot of the credit belongs to Councilman Vash and Gloria Lane. We're expanding our services this year to our seniors. We're purchasing a van. We're hiring a part-time senior services coordinator or administrator. So we're moving, I think, in the right direction. Seniors will not be forgotten. I won't let it. I'm a senior. I won't let it happen. Anybody else from the public need to speak?
There's one more issue that wasn't brought up by Joyce that I think should be brought up, and it's the closing of the center from July 1st to July 8th.
Yeah, I'll bring it up.
You're going to bring
Well,
it up?
keep in mind that the center has always been closed for 1 week for vacation. Okay?
The
Usually,
center has always been open during the time that there's been a vacation, because the card players go in, Peter, they do.
It's the services, basically the activities get closed for 1 week. The center was open, so the issue was people that come in 100 people a day, some that come over there as their second home. The center was open, no activities. Now it seems to be, and we have to find out, that the entire center is closing.
They're talking specifically about the time period that we're
Yes.
shifting the closure to, but the center always closes for 1 week as well.
No.
yeah, Max, please, don't say.
We talked to here.
The doors are open.
The doors are open.
But who would be in there?
The director and the assistant director.
Well, they don't get a vacation?
They take it.
I was under the impression that they were on vacation
No.
for 1 week in August and the center was closed.
No.
The center is closed and we do work there.
I'll look into that, but to the best of my knowledge, and I'm fairly sure that the center has been closed for a week, because that's when we do serious maintenance work there.
Maintenance and renovation.
And the director and the assistant director have been on vacation, but we'll verify that. Anything else?
No.
I mean, I can't say yes or no, but
But
I'm definitely going to find out.
I'm going to tell you, because I've been there. And
Okay.
The center is supposedly closed, but the card players can
Who
go in.
opens it?
And you can, the director is there.
So the director doesn't go on
They
vacation?
go at different times.
We'll verify that. We're not looking to make
But a
anybody,
center-
we're not looking to have any seniors homeless even for a week.
Yeah, but I'm going to tell you, the center, nowhere in Bergen County closes for a week. They just don't close the doors, It's always open because the staff will stagger their hours, the staff will be flexible about vacations, one will take 1 week, that kind of thing.
We'll talk about it. If that's the case, Councilman Zena, can we take Wednesdays?
Sure.
That's dancing day.
We got 7, it just so happens we have 7 members of the company body and 7 days in a week.
Only 5 days, the center's open 5 days.
That's true.
So
We
we
can have
got,
the week off.
I'll have Sunday.
Weekend.
I'll have Sunday.
Okay, let's move on to be considered. The first item on to be considered is landscape architectural services for Oresco Park. Paul, I'd like you and Jewel to handle this if you don't mind.
All right.
I guess to begin with, we had focused on the landscape architectural materials that you have seen. And we're actually shifting the focus slightly because unfortunately the chair of the HPC who was supposed to be present tonight, and to also bring a guest, the landscape architect that prepared the materials. There was a change in her schedule, so she's not able to be there. So, in my opinion, I think what we'd like to do is to really hone in on the central issue, which is really the development of the park, because that's really what the materials relate to. The HPC has been very helpful in assisting us in pulling together some baseline data so that we could advance this effort and provide really more of a project. We discussed this, but we discussed it with such large intervals of time in between, from 2014 to 2015 and now 2016. But the issue is still the same. We're looking at establishing the monument in honor of the late Sergeant Nicholas Oresco in the park. The council has taken the action of dedicating the park to his memory, renaming the park for him. And the HPC was tasked with getting information together regarding the actual monument. They've done that. And then subsequent to that, there was a sense that the park itself, that we really weren't doing Sergeant Oresco justice, because the park needs some work. And then the question was always how to basically fit all of these pieces together and make it one big project so that things weren't happening in a disparate manner and at different points in time. So that's our intent. Our intent is to make the renovation of the park and the establishment of the monument one large project. So of course we got to the issue of financing. Probably a year or 2 years ago, I think we were discussing doing it as a capital project. But in the meantime, the borough has collected considerable funds through the Open Space Trust Fund. And back when we had our last formal discussion in February, that is kind of where we were headed. And essentially what I was trying to do was to partner with the HPC and try to bring this thing to a conclusion, not in terms of a decision as to whether or not we would be authorized to shape this project and look forward to having it financed by the Open Space Fund. Yes, we could use capital dollars, but capital dollars are debt. And we've been collecting money for multiple years for this purpose. And that's what we're trying to find out. And we're trying to find out if the council is amenable and moving towards the decision of allowing us to rely on that as the source of funds.
We're not talking about significant money.
We're
90,000.
I would say 90 to 100,000, and that's because
Including
there
the
is some, that would include soft costs.
Right.
That would include soft costs. As I said, the HPC has provided us with materials that have been available for you to take a look at, and I think they've done a great job. But we don't want to make them feel as though this whole initiative rests on their shoulders. It's not fair to them.
So they pretty much created the monument,
Yes.
which is really their job. It's up to us to find somebody to create the park.
Correct.
I
And
mean,
that's
it's not
the
a
only
huge
project.
space. It shouldn't cost us that much money. A lot of the work perhaps can be done in-house. You know, once we get a design like where the paths should go and maybe landscaping, I think that's what we need from a professional, an architect. You know, where the monument goes, how we set this park up. And I think that if we do the right thing, and we get sprinklers in there and take care of it, we have a nice, really nice passive park at the foot of Washington Street, which I think residents from Tenafly Senior House, anybody that uses the post office, kids after school, will find it a welcoming place, and kind of like the other end of Hyla Park, will have bookends.
correct. Now, you don't have to consider the specific proposals, because essentially what this gentleman was asked to do, and I really appreciate the fact that he did this. I mean, obviously, if we did the job, he could apply for the job. He could respond. But he was asked to give us an idea of, from a landscape architect's perspective, you know, what the cost might be. And I think that based on my discussions with Karen, I think that she laid out a very reasonable and very realistic plan of what we were looking for, which is basically to upgrade and enhance the park and create a good setting, an attractive setting for the monument.
So we'll let Paul speak and then Mark next, and then you.
The crux of the issue that, people have been, I guess the obstacles that you come across is in the abstract, we know we want to upgrade the park. So you want to try to figure out, how much it would be roughly. When you approach landscape architects and say, well, can you give us an estimate on a site plan, other than really abstract numbers, they want to be hired, because coming up with a site plan is part of what they do. While you're deliberating, they continue to book up. So if you go back to them, say a month later, all right, we're ready for a site plan. Now they're like, I'm booked into July now. So this is kind of the issue. We have to sort of say, are we going to use the open space money? We've got, and Jewel has all the stuff laid out, a preliminary estimate that should be pretty good, that we would be able to, how much we would need if we were to hire a landscape architect. And the landscape architects that have been contacted have done projects in the area. One did a big project in Englewood similar to ours, and one I think works with some of the gardens in Tenafly. And we would go to them and say, hey, this is what we want. Can you give us the idea with the paths and the sprinklers, everything that you mentioned? So that's kind of where it's at.
Okay. Mark? And then Max will be in.
So just so I understand it, the plan would be to hire this fellow, Christopher Courage, to do the design.
Right.
And then we go out to bid based on his design.
That could be how it's done, yeah. I mean, he would be one of the ones
Bidding.
Bidding, but we would hire him to do the design for
Well,
us.
we would
is that
hire
what we're saying?
whoever had the
We would hire-
lowest bid,
Right,
acceptable bid.
Right.
But I think what the suggestion is to do the first two steps, a site survey and a park design, which basically will end up with, this is what we're gonna have, then we have to decide who's gonna do it. And have
is it too much, more than we need? Do we want something a little more? And then we can decide on a firmer basis, what we're putting up.
So I just want to follow up,
Right.
I'm sorry, I just want to
one package.
Yeah, it should be one package.
Including the installation and
Right.
furnishing?
Everything.
You're right. How could we bid on what we're gonna build before we know what we're gonna build?
Well, we're not involved in bidding. What we're doing is we would be taking the information that we have.
Right.
We would be formulating an RFP. And the RFP would include all of these items as part of the scope of work.
What we want.
Request for proposals.
We know conceptually what we want. So we prepare request for proposals, RFP, and we solicit that and,
So I'm confused. So how do we already know? How do we know what we want built out there already? How do we come
That's
to
the
that?
P part, proposal part.
Well, I mean, the question is, how do we hire somebody to do, including installation and furnishings, when we haven't agreed on the park design?
Right.
I thought we'd go out, get a
No.
park design,
Right.
and then, once the park design is agreed upon, then you go out for the
But
second
it
part.
can still be part of an overall project.
right.
Those are the phases within the project, and you approve one phase, and then you move to the next phase, and then you approve
See, the
that.
question is, because that's a really, and I'm sorry to interrupt.
Go ahead. No.
Is if I am an architect and I propose 2 lanes and a piece of grass is going to be 20,000, and then we're going to have to take that the lower bid. When somebody can say, no, I want to have 4 lanes, 6 chairs, I want to be able to, and it's 70,000. And then we will say, well, but that's exactly what we want. How can we go for the lower bid? So the question is,
It doesn't cost us anything to do the RFP.
It's not an RFP,
No, it's okay.
it's an RFP that you
yeah,
propose.
we understand that. So what Mark and I are saying is, let's find out what we want first, and then we can bid it out. So if we want a real nice park, can we spend, rather than have 16 different proposals, that we're not going to be able to match once against the other?
Well,
You don't define precisely what you want, because that's where the creativity
Here's the question.
comes in.
Here's-
And what you get to do with this type of proposal is you don't get to choose it just strictly on price, you get to choose based on design.
Here's
Oh,
where
okay,
it's
so
from.
you just said, pardon me, you just said something that clarified it greatly. So, in other words, the RFP goes out, so if Shaman's an architect and does landscaping, she says, this is my idea, and for $70,000, this is what I could do.
Correct.
And Paul may have a completely different idea.
Because that's what you're soliciting visions.
Yes,
Okay.
but you need to approach the architect to do
Bottom
that.
$9 figure, the lowest we get is
So we're not actually
irrespective of
contracting for the
design.
services?
No, we
No.
look at the
Okay.
design.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
You say how much
That-
you want
may
to
I,
spend.
may I?
Correct.
Okay, so here we got two actions that are required. First of all, are we ready to commit basically Green Acres money? In my,
It's not green
open
acres.
space.
Open space money, I'm sorry, open space money. And my opinion is that pretty much that's what open space were for. Green acres, improvement and stuff. So from my point of view, this is a good use
I would
of
agree
it.
with
So
that.
that would be
Yes.
the first thing to know if we have the money, and then the council can vote. Secondly, we're gonna go out to bid and find out which one is the best proposal. And whatever the best proposal, as far as the design and the equivalent price, is that what we're gonna make the decision.
Here's the question, and I don't think anybody knows the answer to except maybe these two, and that is, if we do put out an RFP, and let's say architect number one gives us a plan, and it's $30,000. Architect number two gives us a plan, it's $40,000, but we like architect number two's plan better. Do we have the ability to not take the lowest bid?
That was my question, yeah.
The way you can, yes you do, and the way that happens is that when you get the RFPs, keep in mind that you can actually compete amongst the RFPs. That when you hear people talk about shortlisting consultants,
Right.
that's what you do. So what would happen is the RFP, say we get 10 responses, and we review the 10 responses. We pick the top 3, we pick the top 4. We interview, that's the short list. And then you interview them, and that's your opportunity to ask them questions, give them a little bit more information about, and then they show you, they present.
So the answer is we can choose somebody that
design
has
would
not the lower price. Is that
Correct.
the
Correct.
answer?
Correct.
Yes.
Because it's creative.
Okay.
So then I think, Dan, did you want to ask anything?
We'll finish this.
Okay, so I think Max is correct. We need to do two things here. One is to decide whether or not we are going to move ahead with using open space money for this. If that's the case, then the funding is not a question. We have the funding, certainly have enough funding for that. The second question is whether or not to give our administrator or whoever's going to do it the approval to go ahead and put together an RFP.
Correct.
RFP. Okay, and I believe she'll share it with us before it goes out, and then we'll move this thing forward. I'd like to get this thing done.
Yeah, I vote yes
Just
on
one-
both of
For
those.
using open space money, since that is a trust fund, you have to adopt an ordinance. So
Right.
they have to be
Yeah.
introduced based on our meeting schedule, even if the soonest to introduce is June 21st or 28th, it doesn't matter, the hearing cannot be until July.
Wouldn't we need to know the amount before we have that public
You
hearing?
could, in the ordinance, you could put an up
Up
to
to.
amount.
Right.
So that way, whatever isn't expended goes back to the
That's
trust
usually
fund.
not very good. That's usually not very good because you just give them a
Ceiling.
yeah, immediately everybody
No,
goes
but
back to the
that
city.
money would be, like Joe said, the whole project,
I
not just the
understand, but-
landscaping, but it's the
Earmarking it.
the
Yeah.
monument is to make
No,
sure.
what I'm saying, when you say we're gonna spend up to 70,000, everybody's gonna come up with.
Well, no, that whole
but
season.
what happens, Max, is if that's the case, you reject all the bids and tell them to come back and we'll do it a second time. And eventually they get the message.
Okay, all right, because, and there, I have also one question. There is a survey over here, and I just trying to understand the necessity of a survey when you do a landscape, when the architect is gonna look at all the trees, everything else. What would additionally does the survey do for us?
A regular search of us.
It's a survey, yes, yeah, I
Site
can.
survey, this one
No,
is
no,
site
site survey.
survey?
There is a regular, yeah.
which, as far as I know,
Right.
there is no real,
He's looking for a topographic survey, which is different than just a meets and bounds survey.
So what's a topographic survey?
Topographic survey will show you the elevation.
But that's, the architect said he's gonna do the elevation, and they're already part of his description. I read this.
that was the site.
This is basically what we would be using as guidance. This would be folded into the larger project.
What I'm saying,
This work is not commissioned. Essentially, this individual was asked and did respond to the HPC to give them some ideas of what the process
but we might not
would be.
use that.
Correct.
Might not do that, okay, because I couldn't
No,
find.
we should do a survey. We should do a topographic survey. I'm just saying we may not use this particular,
Because it's going into the RFP.
correct?
Right, we're not agreeing to spend this
Somebody
amount.
might combine the park design with the survey.
Exactly, which is what
You
we,
leave it up to them, because they understand that the bottom line is gonna be, play a serious role in our choosing of the vendor here.
yeah, because exactly, that's what the architect said.
So,
He told the
am I
site
correct
analyst.
in hearing that we're gonna move forward with this then,
I'd agree to move forward, yeah.
Dan? Okay, let's move on to.
Oh, hold on. What's the turnaround on the making the monument?
I believe that they're ready, as they've been over the details with plaque size,
Right.
several different monument sizes and base, and it would be roughly a month.
Oh, okay.
If you said tomorrow,
I think it's
here
the
we
least of
are.
our problems.
Yeah.
Does Lizette need a number to put in? A dollar amount, not to exceed?
100,000.
Yeah, that's more than.
Make sure we cover it.
Okay, the next item is the amendment to the Elm Street easement. This is kind of a boilerplate thing that a resident has been waiting for a long time. Bill?
This is basically just, we already approved this, but because the county clerk is so strict in terms of what you can and can't record, we had to make some amendments to the original ordinance so that it could be recorded as an amendment to the easement. So really, we're not doing anything other than putting it into recordable form, so it can be actually on the record to the county clerk. So you already approved this, so this amendment really is just technical.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is a landmark tree recommendation. We have a support for the designation from Bob Culvert, who is our tree man. It's very unusual, unfortunately, that we have residents requesting a landmark designation for a tree on their property, and I think it's wonderful.
What does that do? Got footage or something like that?
It makes it subject to the landmark tree provisions in our tree ordinance, which gives much greater protection to the tree. It doesn't mean it can never be cut down, but it makes it much more difficult.
No tree houses. Okay, the next item is Engle Street parking. We have had some complaints from residents about the commuter parking up there. And what this is going to do is significantly improve the site distances for people coming out of the side streets. It will displace a few cars, but the street is long enough to absorb it. A long time ago, we decided to get the commuters off of the side streets, knowing where they go. And Engle Street really is, we're fortunate it can handle parking on both sides of the streets. The only problem is coming out of the side streets, so this will definitely improve it. So unless anybody has any
It's
comments.
just a question. Every street and every distance is 75 feet. On Engle Street West, from the southern curve, it's 100 feet. That's so unusual. All of them are 75 and that's 100. Just as a...
You know what, I think it is a tree. I think there's a big tree there.
That's possible, but it just jumps out at you.
Yeah, but having come out of that corner, I think that's an issue.
Is that Innis?
Elm Street?
No, Elm.
And that's on the other side.
Okay,
No,
so we'll
that corner has
we'll ask the chief to
wall.
move
Wall
on.
house.
The last item is, I traditionally put this on around this time every year, in case there's any interest in doing a ceremony on 9/11. It
I
takes a
think we
little
should.
planning. This would be the 15th anniversary. I know my predecessor, Mayor Moskowitz, did a nice job of the 10th anniversary. I know there's not that much interest in it, but I just want to lay it out there in case you folks want to
Yeah, we
have
should
a
do it.
I think that we should do it,
It's
absolutely.
Sunday, the 11th, September 11th.
I think it's nice.
What I can do is I could ask a couple of clergy people to, if they would want to come and do a short ceremony.
That's
And,
right.
if that's the case, we can promote it.
Especially now with all these problems that are going on, and
think it's a good
to
idea.
celebrate the people that worked over there
We'll have Donald Trump come and speak.
you'll have
It's not smooth things around. Okay, administrators
He
report,
said he's
please.
gonna have Ben Park. Ben Park coming.
Hopefully you got a chance to review some of the items.
Yes.
Some of them, for the most part, pretty straightforward. I know one will discuss a little further. The Warren Means Trust donation, essentially, we were advised that the borough has received a gift of $100,000 that is being given in memory of Mrs. Alice Orto Means by her late son Warren Means. We were given notification about 2 or 3 months ago, and we were basically awaiting the paperwork that would allow them to release those funds to the borough. We have received that. I've given the paperwork to Bill to take a look at. Do you have any?
Yeah, the way that they drafted the acceptance of the donation requires that an official of the borough execute the acceptance and agree. This is normal. This part is normal, I'll say, that in the event that the estate is subject to some obligations that the executor has to pay, that we will be willing to refund our proportionate share of any amounts that are necessary. That's what's called the refunding bond, and it's traditional in every case where someone inherits something or receives a donation or a gift, not donation, but a gift through an estate. So that's pretty much standard. There is a provision that we hold the trustee harmless because it's coming from a trust. So my recommendation, they originally drafted it for Jewel to sign by herself, but I think since it requires us to execute an indem agreement, that has to be done by way of resolution, authorizing Jewel to sign. In other words, rather than just Jewel signing it, when I looked at it, I said, you know what, Jewel, you can't sign this without some authorization by the council, so we need a resolution.
Is there a sunset provision on that?
Yeah, actually, there's an OSA claim provision. In New Jersey, it's 6 months. It might be a year in New York. In fact, I think it is a year in New York. So, from the date of publication, and that may have already happened. So, at the worst, it would be a year.
Is there anybody here opposed to accepting this gift?
That's fine.
Yes, we're, hopefully we would never have to refund, but we are not proposing to expend the full amount in one fell swoop, so there would be some remainder.
So
So are we gonna
that's
like
like
some sort of reserve, 10% reserve, or something like that?
Well, we're not looking at a particular percentage, but yes, there would be a reserve. We've been talking about basically bringing back the luster of our rose garden
Yeah,
at DJ
that's
Park.
good. But
So
say-
there would
That's
be
not going to be, it's not going to be part of the resolution. I'll do the resolution
Set.
for next week, just to accept it,
Okay.
authorizing Jewel to sign. But in terms of
We'll have to come back with any
you know,
specific.
what you want to do with it,
activities.
that's completely separate and apart from the acceptance.
Does the rose garden have a name?
Jack Lissamore Rose Garden.
Oh, so it's already named.
It's already been dedicated.
Oh, really?
There's a plaque there, isn't there, Paul?
Yeah, it was named after a fellow who used to volunteer and tend the roses for many years. He was a champion rose
Grower.
grower.
Really?
Well, I would say this, I think anybody that's been through the park, the DPW's doing a pretty good job, you know, all things considering. They don't have the manpower they really need, but, I know I walked in with Bob Colvin and we had a checklist and things are looking, and the new gazebo is really nice.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Hopefully everybody here will be joining us for Thursday night concerts there. Next.
Grant to board, you may recall that we were given authorization last summer to submit for the upper portion of River Park. We're basically putting the finishing touches on the lower portion, which is the young children's playground, play area. And now we're looking at the upper portion, which handles older children. And the information is here in terms of the dollar amounts. We've been awarded a $50,000 grant, and we have a $50,000 match, which is contained in our 2016 capital budget. And all goes well, we would like to put this resolution on for the meeting on the 21st and then execute the contract. We sign on our end, then we return the contract to the county, and then they execute their portion, and then it comes back. So we'd be looking at actually doing the work in spring 2017. Wanted to bring you up to date about the change in deputy registrar. As I explained here, that work has been, position has been done by Lindsey Graham for several years. It's actually expanded. When this first started out, Lindsay did have to attend some training, and she did that on her own time on Saturdays, which we really appreciate. But essentially, it's going from the state just requiring the name of the individual to now requiring a resolution appointing the person, or at least acknowledging and informing them officially of who that person is. And now that deputy position is also held accountable for really knowing the state requirements and understanding the software packages and everything they've been introducing. And that's part of what is making it more difficult for Lindsay to do it, because she's a very busy person to begin with. And as I said, the state unfortunately keeps expanding the role of the deputy registrar. So Christine Atanasio in my office has agreed to accept the responsibility. And for us, it's actually a win-win. At the time where that responsibility first came upon us, we did not have available staff in our office, but the function has always been part of our administration. So it'll be nice now to have the full operation within the Department of Administration.
Can I ask you a question, please?
Sure.
And you're gonna say, well, you always ask this. We paid right now Lindsay $2,500 a year as a stipend, correct?
Correct.
All right. This is the question I have. When a person basically is paid full-time to do the job and has extra time because nobody's going to do it overtime over here and takes in this extra job, it's like, okay, you have time, here's additional thing that you have because you are paid to work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I understand that there is an incentive on that, but if the person that does the work can do it during these 8 hours that they are paid to do it, I'm a little bit taken aback anytime we have these stipends going around for people that are already paid to do the work 8 hours a day, and if they have time, just putting it an additional during their time to get additional money. I know that this is a philosophical question about stipends and people working 8 hours a day and having time. So that's something that I was trying to bring up.
But it's not just philosophical, and I think we discussed it at length in the budget hearings. Number one, it's not as simple as people have time. Our employees are union employees, and their contracts are very, very clear about the scope of their work being part of their assigned responsibilities. I don't find it unusual at all for employees to be asked to take on extra assignments. Plus, they volunteer. This is not something that we can require people to do. We solicit and we get responses. And that's one of the reasons that it is a stipend. We do not roll what we can call extra duty assignments into people's regular pay. And that's what makes it portable. So if one individual feels that their normal routine or regular responsibilities do not no longer permit them to perform an extra duty assignment effectively, that assignment can be transferred to another individual along with the money. It's not that people get off the work and keep the money. It doesn't work that way. And that's come over a long period of time. It's unfortunate, but the state is constantly expanding what we do. And a lot of what they ask us to do these days is outside of people's normal responsibilities. You can call them unfunded mandates, and many of them are, but unfortunately, we're not absolved of that responsibility.
Yeah, but when I get another task, my boss tells you need to do that because that's what it is.
And that is true when it's part of your job description, but when it's outside of your job description, there are provisions in people's union contracts for
I
extra duty
think
work.
you've said what you need to say, Max, and I understand where you're coming from, but I think the explanation is fairly
Right,
clear.
and it's not just an incentive. I mean, basically, these are times where the people are asked to be held accountable for this. This is a name that would go down to the state, and this is who the state will be holding responsible.
Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
Pilot. Bergen County Sheriff Pilot.
Correct. Basically, the goal here was to make you aware that if you weren't aware of it, that a law was passed that became effective in January of this year, which permits counties to collect 5% of the amount paid to municipalities for for amounts that are covered by pilot agreements. And the county gave us advance notice that they were putting the law into effect. They reached out to municipal clerks and tax assessors throughout the state, and through Oprah, they requested detailed information on all existing pilot agreements that were in existence between municipalities and developers. They
What's a
advised
pilot
us
agreement? I'm sorry.
payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay.
So this is a project where the owner does not get a standard tax bill. They get billed for a specific or set amount that has been agreed upon. And quite frankly, you can see that our initial request is for $857. I think we can bear that. Quite frankly, we're a small community. And not just that, but it's more important that we don't transact a lot of pilot agreements, but some communities do. And this is really aimed at the Hackensacks and the Fort Lees
And Dumont now has a huge pilot
This is
agreement.
typical of what the state and the county are doing now. They're trying to grab as much money from and they tell us that they're supporting us, and then they take whatever they can.
In Brooklyn, we used to call it protection money.
Okay, so Susan is aware of this. I'm sorry if you didn't know, our CFO is here, and she's aware of this.
So she's gonna pay $857?
Yeah, and now there was also, I received an informal, question about the 311 Tenafly Road, the project that we have with United Way, because that also has a pilot agreement.
Yeah.
Here again, it's a very small amount, but the county has been communicating with us in writing. They've made it clear that they were looking at a specific period in time, and the United Way agreement actually came after that. But they are continuing. They will be catching up with years 2015 and 2016.
They'll get to this.
They'll get to us.
Because I spoke with Tom Toronto today, and he said that they've already gotten to the ones in Allendale and closer to Cresco, wherever he is.
So
They're
we're
older than
coming.
ours.
Mhm. Okay, all right. And now we're back to the issue of the closure of the senior center for 1 week. I understand what Gloria was saying, and yes, we consider the center closed, and we schedule a lot of things. I'm not going to deny or dispute.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. So you moved. You changed. That perhaps the director, on her own volition, opened the center to allow activities. But the difference is that we had two people. We had both the director and the assistant director in place. This year, we're facing a different situation. We're facing a situation where we only have the assistant director. And we looked at a few options. We don't have quite frankly, the luxury of having an employee or someone who is available to basically just sit in the center for a week. And
That was a
as
emergency request that I was gonna make at the request of the chairman of the meeting, because they need two things. They need somebody to be able to support when the assistant director goes out for lunch, and somebody that will be able, in case that something happened to the assistant director, be able to support the activities of the center, because you can never know what happened from day to
well,
day.
we will be talking about that later this
Okay,
evening.
and if that happens, that might alleviate the issue with the closings
No, it
during.
won't.
So why don't we just ask someone on the senior committee or the senior senate committee to come up with a couple of volunteers for a week to sit there to be
That's
responsible?
not appropriate, and that's not
We
gonna
can't
work with
because
our
of the insurance and all kind of baloney, you have to have a fully insured employee.
But as I said, I mean, we
Bonded, you have to be
believe me, we
bonded.
looked at this from every, and that's why we're trying to,
Both sides.
yeah, we're trying to look at every aspect of this. And because we typically do our, detailed cleaning and annual maintenance, we're shifting that to the week as well. Because this way, one of the things we wanted to avoid was we didn't want to remain on that schedule, so that we might be looking at a partial or temporary closing again in August. So since we are in this position, we're going to combine it and do both in July.
Well, it's also only a 4-day because of the holiday.
Can we offer a stipend?
Stipend to somebody for a week, from the employees? No, they're working.
But if they can take on additional dog licenses,
You have to actually be somewhere.
dog license or something like that.
We only do dog licenses in January, February.
No, we do it all year long.
Updates,
DPW building, happy to say that the contractor is back on the job. We had a meeting with the contractor on Friday, June 10th. We already have in hand a revised schedule for the overall project. We made sure he has a very detailed, he now has a bi-weekly work schedule where we check each task. So I'll be giving you a more detailed report on June 28th, I think.
Does he have he gave you a broad scenario of where he is? When does he expect to have the building complete?
Well, that's part of the schedule. We're looking at, I would say a delay, we're looking at an extension of 90 to 100 days, but with no additional cost.
This is all related to the previous issue with
Yeah.
bonding.
Yeah.
It was bonding issue?
Well,
No.
it was the fact that they could not work.
Right.
Why couldn't they work?
Yeah, well, that was part of it, but some of the delay was as a result of the
Yeah.
situation.
We were some of the delay, there's
Oh,
no
okay.
doubt about that. It was the
Okay.
borough as well.
Yeah, their delay because of the bond probably was.
They kind of took advantage of it.
Yeah.
It was the tail
2
end.
weeks.
But they kind of-
3 weeks maybe.
And we were not appraised that we had a stoppage. I mean, I knew we had an issue with the bonding, but we didn't know that we had a
No,
stoppage.
we didn't have a, we
They were
didn't have a
work- they were
stoppage.
working anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
They were
There was
working anyway.
other, right, the remediation didn't stop. That was major, so there was work there, but there were times where they probably could have interacted a little more. But once we became aware of the bond situation, we couldn't allow them to work.
Right, that wasn't a major delay though.
Yeah.
We were already behind schedule, sort of behind schedule because of the remediation.
Correct.
Behind the original project.
Remediation, could you spell out what?
Well, you all know what
Yeah.
the remediation
You went through that.
was.
Okay.
all right, let's move on.
Borough website update,
3 months.
at the request of Councilman Zinna.
Oh, the website? It looks good.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. What else can we throw up on there? That looks awesome.
I think that's enough for now.
How about people who want trees?
One step at a time.
More icons, those look great.
We're happy to report that our fundraising
good, right?
has
Awesome.
far surpassed last year's level of
More buttons.
20,000, thanks to
Quick links.
the mayor's
like it.
follow-up with the
It's easy.
community.
Great.
We have a couple of county activities coming up that we wanted to make you aware of. We're gearing up for our next round of community development block grant applications, and Bergen County is getting very involved in this issue of cybersecurity. For those of you who may not be aware, there was an actual incident a few months ago where a community's website was hijacked and by a group, a militant group that demanded a ransom.
They demanded slashes.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But seriously, and as a result, you know, obviously we're always watchful and we always have concerns about cybersecurity. But this incident went so far that, you know, prosecutors across the state are now getting involved. So this is a seminar that is going to be taking place at Bergen County Community College. Each community in Bergen County is being allocated 4 seats. I'm one of them. I will check back in with our police and others that are potential attendees to see if they'll be going.
The IT person? That's how you should go.
Right, yeah. And then you see our just the update on the dates for our events, the reports that are attached that are linked to the agenda for your perusal, and any follow-up questions you may have.
And if anybody's interested in that cyber workshop, let Jewel know. We'll see
Yeah, I would
how
like,
we
if
can-
it's possible, I'd like to attend very much. So, and I send everybody a link to download the vaccination against cyber attacks and cyberware, so no computer can be taken over.
Yeah, I saw that, thank you.
Yeah, I sent it. So it's very good. We tested it against 98% of all the cyberware now. But you know, you never know.
And by the way, keep in mind that we do have a concert prior to the fireworks this year, concert starting at 8:30. So I want to see if we can get people there early, because I know it's normally a late arriving crowd. But it'll be a nice concert.
Thank you.
Okay, correspondence. The first letter is, we talked about this a little bit already, and this is the senior center trustees have sent this. Jewel, do you have anything to add? Where we're on this?
We'll be discussing this in closed session.
I need to take this opportunity to discuss the issues for the seniors if it's possible now, or I can do that during for the good of the order, whenever you want to do it.
Well, like Jewel said, we're going to discuss this in closed session.
No, not this one, other issues regarding the seniors that they want me to bring it up. I can do it at the...
Yeah, do it for the good of the order.
Good of the order, okay.
The next piece of correspondence is from BMW. They have 2 locations where I know 269 County Road is a vacant gasoline station, and they park some of their cars there. Originally, there was an issue because they were parking cars on the sidewalk. That is no longer the case. They got permission to park cars there for a 6-month period, which I think ran out in May. Nobody realized it until now. They're asking for another extension for that, and 5 Atwood, which is a small piece of property on a side street.
So what are they looking to do? They're looking to buy a spot?
Well, they're looking to find places to put cars. I mean, that's the problem. The only thing I can say is where 269 County Road is concerned, it probably looks better with a bunch of new BMWs in front of it rather than a vacant gas station. As long as they stay off the sidewalk, and you know, I'm assuming the owner, if he had a prospective tenant for that location, he'd rather have that than a
Parking lot.
But the 5 Atwood, isn't that a residential location?
No.
Is it?
Atwood is Atwood where Island Pools is, or parallel.
Okay, all right, if it's commercial,
No,
it's not.
it's not residential.
Yeah, so,
Okay, all right.
Anybody have any questions on the resolutions?
Yes, I do. And I had long conversations with Jewel. It's basically regarding, it's microsurfacing award contract for, and this is a conversation that I had. Basically, a few weeks ago, we discussed the issue of paving. The fact that all the micro paving and the paving in town is warming up very quickly. And we had over here Mazer, who said that specifically for the asphalt can be 15% recycled point or can be 100% and 100% better. And the issue was that yes, if you use the 100%, it's the same price, and it's just a question of location and
Well,
where
first of
you
all, keep
can
in
find.
mind that that is not about microservice.
Let me just, I'll get to that, because that's where I started. So when this started, when we had this look here, asking for 12 streets to be microsurfaced, I asked Jules, can we have the same information? Because we want to make sure that even if the Department of Transportation pretty much has rules for that, like the asphalt, it was up to 15% recycled, you can get 100% and it's better. Can we make sure that there are rules that would basically allow us to see what is the best alternative, and to make sure that when we do the microsurface, we take the best alternative, because we know that we're having a problem with the microsurfacing and with the fact that they weren't out.
There is no problem with the microsurfacing. It just started a year or two ago, and it basically, microsurfacing is coating the streets. It's not,
We understand that
the
very
asphalt
well.
that you're talking about is when they mill and pave.
No, I understand very well. My street where I live was microsurfaced, and by now it looks so bad. What I want to make sure is that we talk to the engineer, and even if we have to delay for 1 week, is that there are basically, like it was for the asphalt, 50% recycled versus 100%. Are there any way that we can get the best surface in town if there are alternatives to make sure that we get?
The engineer told us where the microsurfacing was concerned, it's a state contract.
Correct.
Everybody gets the same thing. There's no
Statewide.
alternatives for the micro.
We have no options with that?
No,
That's what we
because
need to know, if it's
it's a
options or
state-
not.
Well,
Right.
he answered that question when he was here.
I don't think that we,
We'll let Joel finish
The
with
state has already done the testing, the state has already done the comparisons of the various forms, they've selected the form and they've bid it, and there is a
State
state
contract to
contract,
make it
and we were
cheapest.
operating under a state contract.
How long is it expected to last now? Do we have a sense of that?
Well, you can't,
I know it's a hard question to
yeah,
answer.
it's a hard question because this is maintenance, this is not
Yeah.
Reconstruction.
replacement, it's not resurfacing. What it does, and its sole purpose is to be just one, basically, tool in our arsenal with regard to our road maintenance program. It extends the life of the street, and depending on the level of traffic, the only thing that would happen is that it would advance its time for the milling and paving.
How old is
So-
the Jefferson Street one?
Jefferson is almost 3 years now. And it's-
Decent shape.
Exactly. And we actually looked at micro surfacing separately, because one of the things when we did the first test, which was Jefferson, was we wanted to see how it would survive during the winter.
And it
And
did.
No-
I went
nobody's-
afterwards.
Nobody's stating that microsurfacing, the end result is the same as a new road that's
No.
built in
Correct.
grade.
We're not
It's
saying they're equivalent.
It's not. But, it's basically an effort to save money and give us an opportunity to slow down the
Deterioration.
the deterioration of some streets so that we can catch up. And fortunately, we've agreed to spend more money and do more streets this year, so I think we're going to, for the first time in quite some time, have some headway in
Oh,
this.
question for Julie. Is a material the state contract? Is the contractor who installs it?
Both are, yes.
Because two streets are
Anything
very
else, Max?
different.
no, that's it.
Okay, under new business, Jewel and I met with representatives of the Tenafly Swim Club. That's the one swim club
open.
that's still around. And they produced this for us,
Huh, that's
trying to
fine.
get a sense of what their plans are and where they're going. They seem to be a lot more business-like. And if there's any extras, they will just throw them back up here, please. No extras?
Throw them
We were
down.
very impressed.
Thank you. One of our concerns was they deal properly with the members of the Tenafly Swim Club, which is defunct. And they did. They made a very nice effort to bring them in if there was interest. They gave them the opportunity to join as members for 1 year without posting the bond, so they could see if they would like it or not. Let's see. They did a mass mailing and they're up and running. I would ask that you take a look at this, when you have a moment, and feel free to direct any questions you might have towards Jewel or myself, and if we can't answer them, we can always ask the people who are running.
I have a question, please.
Sure.
Do we know by chance what happened to the bond for the Tenafly members? Were they reimbursed or they just lost it?
They just lost.
There were a significant number of people that never were reimbursed.
So they
The
were.
money just wasn't there.
Question. I don't know what page this is.
I know, it didn't number them.
Lessor-lessee relationship. The landlord should be accountable for some repairs.
Just look at the heading, yeah.
What we need from the town.
Okay.
Is that the end?
No, it's right here.
Oh,
It's,
One,
Oh,
two
it's right
pages
there.
from the end.
2 pages from the end?
No.
What we need from the town too, or what?
It's about 5 pages.
9, 10, 12.
Okay, well, you know what? Let's just look at this for a second. What we need from the town. Lessor-lessee relationship. The town is, after all, our landlord should be held accountable to make some of the needed repairs to the property. Well, the reality of it is, for the last gazillion years, there's been absolutely no level of communication between the boards that run the 2 swim clubs and us. So if they want to start communicating, that's great. I think we all would like to see the swim club be upgraded. So if they have any requests for the town, we'll handle them on a case-by-case basis, depending on what they want us to do and what it would cost us, and if we have the ability to do it. And if there's significant money involved, it'll come before this board.
So Recky's is using the camp, but we don't pay them anything.
That's correct. They come in during the week when it's relatively dead, quiet time.
Right.
And, listen, they're using our property and not paying us very much also. So
That's true.
It's a two-way street.
Yes.
right, yeah. And yeah, because just to clarify, I mean, the spirit of this wasn't that they were making demands.
Right.
They were just indicating
Opening.
what they would like
Right,
us
right.
to
Opening
consider.
communication.
For example, the third bullet point, which is assist us with the removal of many dead trees and vines via the DPW. We're already in the process of doing that, in a manner that works for us as well as them.
But this is a broader question, I guess, for Bill. Contract or lease-wise, how much maintenance are we supposed to provide them as far
No,
as?
under the current lease now, we don't.
We don't have
That's
to
what I mean,
provide
yeah.
anything.
In fact, we've already gone through the discussion about the parking lot.
Right.
The fact that they've never lived up to their responsibilities according to the lease.
So like the best example I always use is BRMC. They contracted from the county, the hospital, but the way the lease is written is, we will take care of certain repairs, but if it's maintenance, the county's on the hook. So what they do is, they don't fix anything, they don't repair, they don't do the $10 repair, they let everything go to hell.
Right. And then,
Hey, we need $1 million for the air conditioner.
Well, that's a bad lease.
Right, that's
Okay.
my.
Our lease is not a bad lease. Our lease is pretty cut and dry.
Right.
We're not really responsible to anything.
Yeah,
It's
there
a
is
ground,
something-
ground lease, they're
Right,
responsible
right.
for everything.
Okay, perfect.
The only thing that is really a question mark is assist with concrete repair of walk side of flat.
Well, once again,
What was it?
it was done in the spirit of, this is something we'd like. They know we're not obligated to do it.
Okay.
So at this particular point in time, I don't think there's much,
But they're asking for a new lease.
Yeah.
It says the lease and the multitude of addenda are out of hand. We really need to get a new lease in place.
And they want
Super
substantial
simple.
tax cuts.
So
Right,
that
they pay
would-
the tax, they pay the taxes on the property. That's all they really pay. Their financial obligation to the borough really is just the equivalent taxes.
Yeah, which they
Well,
wanted to reduce.
First of all, they're in the middle of a season now, so the odds are we're not going to hear too much unless
Right,
there's
right.
a real emergency. Anything of this nature will be discussed at this table in great length. And I would tell them, as I told them already, I said, before any changes would even be considered, we need to see a professional business plan which goes for more than a year or two to get a sense of where you'd like to take this club and why you need our assistance. We're not in a position where we have to do anything. However, we all, I think, agree that a nicer club would reflect well on the community and us. So if they can come up with some sort of a plan that makes sense, I think we should consider it. I'm not suggesting that we change the lease, but let's see what
I
happens.
just want to add to, if you look at that first paragraph, and they made this very clear, it wasn't just provisions of the lease. They mean the fact that the lease is actually spread across multiple documents.
Yeah.
And
Multiple leases from
Well,
Well-
it's one, well, the addenda.
Right,
There
right,
are
that's
basically-
several addenda,
Correct.
and I believe the parking lot
Right, that
is
one.
separate and apart.
But what they would like is, they would like to update the lease so that it's all in one document. And they felt that
Yeah.
it would be actually easier for
To
them
to manage.
to manage.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. I would like to do that. If I,
Well,
there are a
in
few
that-
things
in that
that, there are a
process,
few things over here that are questions, but we're gonna move on when it, like they want, organize a task force to get the Tenafly and Tenafly swing club, a single club.
Well, that's already done. There is only a single club. Dan, did you have your hand up?
Yes. Well, so when we're redoing the lease and we're trying to figure out how to help them out, if we want to help them out, are we allowed to ask them for their real financials rather than round numbers like this?
Oh, yeah,
Everything.
actually, we have the right to that in their current lease.
Okay.
Well, and once again, nobody's saying that that's going to happen.
Right, right, right.
If
Yeah.
that's their desire, then they've really got to come to us, and I think we would be less than diligent if we didn't ask for them for specific. We need to get a better handle on how they're operating, and hopefully, they look like they're really after dealing with the other club for a number of years and really being concerned, this group looks like they may have both feet on the ground.
Yeah, they're much more together.
It's good to have something
Fear of
together.
losing business.
Okay, unless anybody else has any new business, Max, you have any something?
Yeah, I have a few things about the good of the order. We had a meeting with this.
I don't know who put good in that, but to the order.
That's the only way.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. She's on your side.
Oh, well, sure, no. How many times do we do this? Okay, so,
Bring the snacks out.
yeah, so basically, we had a meeting with the senior citizen committee, and there are two specific items that we would like to bring, that I was asked to bring to the council and mayor to be approved. Specifically, there are, Gloria would like to be able to be empowered by the council to contact the Bergen County Workforce, which is the organization that provides and pays for work for the people that are 55 years and older, to see if there the possibility is that the dispatcher and the specific drivers for the bus that we might consider when we'll have to consider can be covered by that program. So no problems. We got all right. The second part.
Just the
Before
only
we go on,
Yeah.
have you ever been there yet?
Yeah,
Who do you speak with? No one emailed me back.
no one emailed you back, I'll have to get the name. I
Candy?
email,
Carol?
no.
No.
The only caveat
No, but,
the only caveat I have for that rule, Gloria, is to please keep Jewel in the loop. That's
oh
all.
yeah, all I want is to be able to go over there and say I'm the representative of Tenafly, and I'm trying to get the information so that if there's a grant application, because hopefully we will get these positions by grant, and do they need job descriptions for the grant, positions that we're looking for, that kind of thing.
So this was basically also stimulated by the fact that we had a guest for our meeting. There was the gentleman from Howard and Harrington Park that they have also bus, and he was both one of the drivers and the scheduler. And all his 5 people or so are fully paid by the grant by Bergen County. The town doesn't pay anything. So we should be able to do the same because, And also what was interesting is that they are now looking for another bus, and they are looking to get another grant because the original bus was also based on a grant from Bergen County.
Do they share with Howard, do they not? The
Yes,
bus?
Howard and exactly. They both of them shared, and they got a grant for the bus, and they got grant for all the drivers and the schedulers, which was very interesting. And we asked to get the specific grant so we can follow up too, so we make sure that we try to. The second part is also regarding another grant from the community chest. There is a possibility that the Y specifically will be able to run a program on Saturday in the senior center, and the community chest is going to be financing that day of work. And there was a lot of demand for people to come to the community, to the senior center during the Saturday. So Gloria has asked the permission to also contact the community chest to find out the information for this grant, to see what can be obtained and how can be run, and then to come back and report to us. So I don't think that anybody has a problem with that.
That's fine.
Sure.
Sounds good.
All right, so those were the two major issues. The issue of the closing was already discussed.
Okay, thank you.
Wait,
Good luck.
I have a separate question for Jewel on that. So let's say we wanted to staff Saturday, Sunday there, just as an example.
Could you speak up, Dan? It's very hard to hear you.
Sorry.
Yes.
So if we want to staff, this is just an example, that building, Saturday, Sunday. What are the logistics? Is it a part-time position? Like,
Well, the
that's-
thing is that
May I explain?
you can't operate that activity outside of the department head, the person who's responsible for the facility. So you have to look at the total picture.
Right, okay.
And as I said,
So even if business hours were Monday through Sunday.
right,
it
we
would have to
can't
be that
have it
person,
operated by people who
not our employee. Okay, gotcha.
who are not our
Gotcha,
employees.
gotcha.
And who are not under the guidance
Right.
of the facility.
Right, gotcha.
But
Right, so
but there's
you,
nothing
Gloria, we're gonna look at
to
the
prevent us from
grants
just looking at
to
the
see what
option.
it is
But,
and report back.
but if the county or community chest wants to donate a grant of X number of dollars, we use that grant to go out and hire somebody who's now an employee of ours. That would be how it would work, correct?
Well,
It's not like
to a
they-
certain extent, but keep in mind that they would still be the staff of the center.
Right.
They would still be under the department head,
Right.
and you're also putting additional responsibility on the existing staff as well. So we just have to look at it and see that
Yeah,
it's
but,
feasible.
but we will consider. it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's not just money.
No, it's not just money. It's a partnership with the YWCA in Ridgewood and the community chest. The YWCA would be responsible for doing the programming over the weekend, and the community chest would be responsible for
Okay. Well, you know what?
and, leaving it, getting more services.
The devil's in the details, but it's nothing we're not gonna close our mind to it.
Yeah, that's what we'll find out.
We'll get a proposal and then
Very simple.
we'll try and make it work.
Yeah.
That's all. All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I'm going to suggest that Bill read the statement and put us in closed session. I want to thank everybody for having the interest of coming here tonight. Safe trip home.
2
May
minutes
we
break.
be following you out the door in a short period of time.
If I want to have
What?
another subject on the post meeting.
At 9 o'clock.
Okay, that's now